Escaping to a deserted island sounds like a spectacular way to live, doesn't it? Living in a remote area surrounded by beaches and palm trees sounds like something out of a dream. Well, what if you were being held there against your will? Or worse, what if you were trapped there without food or water? The dream begins to sound a lot more like a nightmare, and that was very much the case for some of the people who called these 3 mysterious islands home. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at these mysterious island stories. The tragedies of North Brother Island you can't visit. It is hard to believe that the densely populated and world-famous city of Manhattan has even a single plot of uninhabited land. What you may be surprised to find out is that there is actually a 22-acre plot of land called North Brother Island, located in the East River, that belongs to the city, but has been abandoned for over half a century. While it is not open to the public, satellite images and documentary footage reveal that the island has been entirely overgrown by plants, and all that remains are the crumbling ruins of the 12 buildings that once stood. This island was home to Riverside Hospital, a place where people with infectious diseases were sent to be treated and kept in isolation. Diseases like tuberculosis, yellow fever, smallpox, and typhus were rampant at the time, and the city needed a place to care for these contagious patients without risk of further infecting New York's population. Mary Mallon, more commonly known as Typhoid Mary, was the most notorious resident of the hospital. She was the first ever documented person in the United States to be an asymptomatic carrier of typhoid. Mary had been a cook for many of the wealthy families in New York, and suddenly many of them were quickly becoming ill with the contagious typhoid fever. When trying to determine the origins of their illness, the only common denominator was that Mary had cooked for them. Unaware of her condition, she unknowingly infected over 50 people, 3 of whom lost their lives. Mary refused to believe she was a carrier and denied any possibilities that she was the one responsible for the spread of typhoid in her community. To her horror, she was forcibly quarantined on the island against her will by local authorities. She spent nearly 30 years incarcerated in the hospital before she passed away of a stroke in 1938. This is not even the most tragic story to take place on the island. In June of 1904, the congregation of St. Mark's Evangelical Lutheran Church boarded the General Slocum sidewheel boat for their annual end-of-school picnic. Since it was a Wednesday, many of the men were off to work, and the boat's passengers consisted mainly of women and children that were eager to spend the day in the sun of Long Island's North Shore. With all 1,300 of its passengers, the ship made its way to Long Island. As they began their 2-hour voyage upriver, the crew below deck noticed smoke coming through the floorboards. They immediately found the lower deck engulfed in flames and were unable to put them out with the rotted fire hoses aboard the ship. The captain steered the boat towards North Brother Island in the hopes that passengers could jump overboard and swim to safety. The wind caused the fire to spread at an alarming rate, and the ship was engulfed in flames from end to end in a matter of minutes. Passengers had to choose between burning alive or drowning in the choppy river. The boat sank in shallow waters 25 feet from North Brother Island, where the residents and staff were able to get people out of the water and treat their burns. They watched as hundreds of lifeless bodies crashed into the shore. 1,000 people lost their lives that day to the fire and the water. The hospital was repurposed twice, once in the 1940s for veterans housing, and then as a substance rehabilitation centre that was shut down after widespread reports of staff corruption. It has been abandoned ever since and is now a bird sanctuary. Unexplained bones of Henderson Island. Undisturbed in the eastern South Pacific, Henderson Island is considered one of the world's best remaining examples of a pristine elevated coral atoll, whose ecology has nearly avoided the influence of humans. It is the last remaining atoll in the world with a pristine forest and a biologically diverse ecosystem that has not felt the negative impact of human disturbance. Fresh water is scarce on the island, and the terrain is made up of jagged rock and dense thicket, making it unsuitable for agriculture or human habitation. It was a miracle that the shipwrecked crew of the American whaling ship Essex was able to survive on the island for several months between 1820 and 1821 before their rescue. While in mid-ocean, the whaling ship was sunk by a mighty 40-foot sperm whale, which is thought to be the inspiration for Herman Melville's Moby Dick. The survivors escaped on a small boat and sailed towards Henderson Island. Once there, 4 crew members stayed on the island while the rest sailed off in an endeavour to reach South America. Those left on the island had no food and no fresh water. They would not have survived without a few lucky rainfalls that provided drinking water. However, they struggled to find food without the ability to hunt or fish. To sustain themselves, they had to suck the blood of the birds they could catch and would eat any turtles they could find on the shore. To shelter themselves from the elements, they stayed in caves formed by nature among the rocks. In one cave, they found 6 complete skeletons that were laid side by side neatly, almost as if they had planned to die together. This was a strange find on an uninhabited island, and it was assumed they were the remains of another shipwrecked crew. In 1958, nearly 140 years later, another 6 skeletons were found on a separate part of the island. In an effort to respect the dead, the bones were always left untouched, except for the samples of hair taken from the skulls in an attempt to identify the bodies. It was not until 1992 that a researcher, Dr. Wiesler, took parts of the skeletons to his lab to analyze and determine that all the human remains were actually from prehistoric Polynesians that were thought to have lived on the island at one time. Prehistoric wonders of Gozo Island. Gozo, an island in the Mediterranean Sea, is home to the oldest freestanding structures in the world. Predating Stonehenge and even the Great Pyramids, the megalithic temples of Malta date back to 3600 BC. Researchers estimated that Gozo has been inhabited since 5000 BC and was originally found by Sicilian farmers, which they deduced from finding similar pottery found in both areas from the same time. During the Neolithic period, Gantia temples were built, making Gozo an important place for cultural evolution with the world's oldest religious structures. Today, the temples are the best preserved historical sites in the Maltese Islands thanks to extensive preservation efforts. The Gantia temples, which is Maltese for place of giants, were aptly named as the Gozotans believed they were built by a race of giants. The actual technique used to construct these magnificent temples is still unknown. Researchers have found a number of massive spherical stones that could have been used to roll the gigantic pieces of the temple into place, but there is no explanation of how they would have managed to place and stack the stones to form the temples. Greek historians Eumerus and Callimachus maintain that Gozo is actually the island Ogygia, described by Homer as the home of the nymph Calypso, daughter of the Titan Atlas, who holds up the sky on his shoulders. You can still visit these prehistoric structures today, and they are among the top tourist attractions in the area. But what do you make of these mysterious islands and their hidden stories? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below and help us by growing this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.